Ready for more? Today, we're going to discuss nouns, the persons, places, and things of a sentence. Verbs had person, number, tense, voice, mood, these 5 headings under which we discussed the meaning, the grammar of that verb. Nouns only have 3. They have something called case, something called gender, and something called number. That's the order in which I memorize and recite them. I suggest you do the same, or at least pick an order you'll stay consistent with. That said, case is the trickiest. The first one is the trickiest. So we're going to start with gender. Latin has 3 grammatical genders. These are masculine, feminine, and neuter. Most nouns only have one gender. So a noun only ever appears in its gender, in its native gender, in one gender that it has. There are exceptions. There are nouns that exist in multiple genders, but these will be given to you as separate dictionary entries, as separate words. So for instance, the word friend. Amicus is a masculine friend, amica is a female friend. You'll learn these as 2 separate words, despite the fact that they're pretty clearly one word that just exists in 2 genders. So, for now, you will learn a word along with its gender, and its gender will be given to you in the dictionary entry as either a little m, signifying masculine, a little f, signifying feminine, a little n, signifying neuter. For people who've never learned a language with grammatical gender before, it's important to emphasize that just because a noun is grammatically feminine did not mean that speakers of that language associated it with things that had a particular biological characteristics or were sociologically considered feminine. That's not how this works. These are grammatical categories for grouping like things, or for grouping and disambiguating nouns and adjectives, which you'll see how that works in a bit. That said, they did use grammatical, amicus, the masculine form, was used for males in a society, and amica, the feminine form, was used for females. The second category is number. This one's not very tricky at all. This is number. Latin nouns exist both as singular nouns and as plural nouns. So, just like the verb, you'll have both a singular and a plural form of every noun. Then we get case. And to talk about case, we need to talk about syntax. Syntax is a description of the role, the function a word is playing in a sentence. English does syntax with word order. The dog bites the boy. How do you know who is biting whom? Word order. You know the dog is doing the biting because the dog comes before the verb. And you know the boy is being bitten because in the sentence the dog bites the boy comes after the verb. Okay? If we flipped it, the boy bites the dog, which would be a different story. Now we know the boy is doing the biting because the boy is coming before the verb and the dog after. Latin doesn't do this. Instead of using word order, Latin uses something called declension. We change the spelling of the noun in order to communicate what it's doing in the sentence, which means you can have those words appear in any order. Boy, dog, bite, bite, dog, boy, bite, boy, in any order. And depending on how you spell the different nouns in that sentence, it'll tell you who is biting whom. Okay? Which means you need to learn some categories for functions in a sentence. And we're going to cover 6 today. There are basically 6 in Latin. The first and most basic in a sentence is the nominative case. The nominative case tells you which word is the subject. Okay? So the subject of a sentence appears in the nominative case. It's pretty simple. That's extremely regular. There is a subclass of nominatives called predicate nominatives. That should sound like a contradiction. A predicate nominative appears under one circumstance. You have a nominative that always tells you the subject, but a nominative will be part of the predicate if your verb is what's called a copula, an is verb, a verb that identifies one thing with another. If I say, the boy is a soldier, both of those words, because we're equating them, both of those words are going to go into the nominative. Usually, however, dog bites boy, the dog is going to be in the nominative because the dog is doing the biting. That means we could put dog as the last word in the sentence, and as long as it's in the nominative case, we know what it's doing in the sentence. We know it's doing the biting, and the boy is being bitten. All right. Our next case is called the genitive case. And the genitive is adjectival. It limits the extent or the meaning of the noun it's modifying. It's not an adjective. We will learn adjectives. It is adjectival. It's telling you something about it is telling you something about another noun. A helpful shorthand for the genitive is the English preposition of. If you want to say the table of wood, that word would go into the genitive because it's telling us what kind of table. You want to say the sister of Ian. Ian would go into the genitive. Whose sister? Ian's sister. I'm going to say the crowd of people. Crowd could be in any case. Let's say nominative. The crowd of people is happy. Crowd could be nominative. People would go into the genitive because people is telling you what kind of crowd. Genitive functions adjectivally and it limits. Of will not always work. And of course, English does possession, right? The computer of Ian. We don't usually say that. We usually say Ian's computer with the apostrophe s. This is going to be confusing because, again, the noun here is the nominative. The main noun here is the computer. Ian's computer. Ian is telling you something about the computer. It's adjectival to the computer. So Ian would again go into the genitive. Genitive is adjectival. Most frequently, the most common categories of the genitive are possession and composition. Those two cover a decent percentage of the different kinds of genitive. If we included characterization, then we cover most of that. So possession, composition, and characterization, I guess. So there you, and the nominative and the genitive are going to be your lexical forms. They're going to be the forms that show up in a dictionary entry for the word. So when you get a new word, they will always give you two forms, just like the verb gave you those four principal parts. They give you four forms. A noun will always give you two forms. They'll give you the nominative and the genitive in that order, and that's going to be important. We'll see in a bit. The next case we need to learn is the dative. And the dative is what's called an indirect object. It is not the direct object, which we'll talk about in a second. It's not the thing being acted upon. It is an indirect object. It's another object that's tangentially related to the action. The dative, for the most part, is adverbial. So the genitive is adjectival, the dative is adverbial. It is telling you to or for whom a verb is being done, in general. So if I give the pizza to the man, the pizza is being given. We'll talk about what case that is in a second. I'm giving the pizza. I'm the nominative. I'm the subject. and we'll say I give the pizza of the chef. So then chef goes in genitive, right? To the man. There's our dative, right? There's a noun that is benefiting, that is being a recipient of, that is being affected by the verb of giving indirectly. You're not verbing the dative, you're verbing the accusative. Oh, that's the next case. You are verbing the accusative to or for the dative, okay? A nominative verbs accusatives for datives. Shorthand, indirect objects, to or for. They are your most common ways of translating the dative. As we'll find, that won't cover everything. It's a good place to start. Then we get the accusative case. The accusative, as I already spoiled a little bit, is the direct object. So dative is indirect object, and the accusative is the direct object. This tells you what noun in the sentence is being directly acted upon if there's an active verb, right? The accusatives pretty much only show up with active verbs. So, the dog bites the boy. The dog is doing the biting, so no matter where it shows up in the sentence, it's going to be in the nominative. But the boy is the thing the dog is biting. The boy needs to be accusative. That makes it the direct object, makes it the recipient of the action. In English, we usually mark this by putting this directly after the verb. Usually. There's exceptions. Again, this can show up anywhere in the sentence, but it tells you what or whom is being directly acted upon by the verb, the direct object. And then lastly, we have the most confusing case in Latin, and that's the ablative. There's actually an interesting historical reason this is the most confusing. Proto-Indo-European had additional cases. It had an instrumental case, it had a locative case, which will still show up as a separate case a few times in Latin. Spoilers for later. And it had a proper ablative case. So it had these three cases: the instrumental, the locative, and the proper ablative. Now, instrumental, as the name suggests, tells you the instrument, the means or manner with which an action is being done. I hit the tree with a bat. The bat would be the instrument. The locative tells you the location. I walk in a garden. I am eating at home. I am recording in my office. That's what a locative does, location. Instrument, location. And then a true ablative is separation. Ablatus is the Latin roots here, to separate from, to carry away from. The true ablative is something like, I come from Minnesota. I am from Minnesota. That's a proper ablative. But in Latin, these three cases, the three Proto-Indo-European cases, have been collapsed up into the ablative, which means that the ablative will communicate means and manner, location, and instrument. So instrument means and manner, location, and separation. Instrument, location, and ablative. Means and manner, location, and separation. The shorthand they have school children memorize to sort of as a go-to reference for translating the ablative is in, by, with, from. In, by, with, from. That will get you some ways. Now, you can be misled by this. With sounds like I hang out with my friends. That's not what we mean here. It's with in the sense of instrument, as in I hit the tree with a bat. So don't be misled by in, by, with, from. That's a nice shorthand, it's a nice cheat, but it is not telling you the actual grammatical information you need to know, which is this can be separation, ablative, location, locative, and means and manner, instrument. Okay? Because of this ambiguity, Latin authors were very aware that there's a bunch of different meanings all fitting under the ablative heading. Because of this ambiguity, the ablative is the case most often used with prepositions. So they will introduce prepositions as separate words in order to disambiguate the meanings of the ablative. In order to show you, oh, this is an ablative of separation. So we'll learn about prepositions down the road. Ablatives do appear all by themselves, unmodified, and you need to be able to say, oh, this could be instrument, location, or separation, and you have to use context to figure that out sometimes. But Latin authors, in cases that Latin authors understood, that they themselves understood to be ambiguous, they had ways of resolving that ambiguity. This was a language that was used by lots of people for many, many years. So things that seem like they're going to be a problem, they had solutions to. And then our easiest case for the day is the vocative. And the vocative is used for direct address. If you are going to call out to someone in particular, it's from the word vocare, which we learned in class yesterday. Vocative is to directly address someone. Oh, teacher. Hey, students. When you are directly addressing someone, you'll put that noun into the vocative. Okay? So we're almost done here. We've learned that nouns have case, gender, and number. There are 6 cases we've learned today: nominative, genitive, dative, accusative, ablative, and vocative. 2 numbers, singular and plural, and 3 genders, masculine, feminine, and neuter. Okay? Those are the categories of meaning. And there aren't any more. Unlike the verb, where we're going to keep learning more of these as we go throughout the year, that's all of them. You'll learn that a few words have distinct locatives, but that's pretty much all of them. You pretty much know the entire nominal grammatical system. But just like verbs had conjugations, right? We talked about first, second, third, and fourth conjugations, which did not tell you anything about their meaning. It was a way of arranging or grouping words that were spelled similarly. Remember that thematic vowel changed for the conjugation? So conjugations don't tell you anything meaningful about the word. They just group similar spellings. Nouns have something called declensions, which again is a morphological category, not a syntactic category. It is a category of spelling, not of meaning. So when you learn that a noun is first declension, or second declension, or third declension, you don't learn anything at all about its meaning. You just learn, oh, it's going to be spelled in a particular way. Okay? So nouns have declensions. There are 5 of them. And they will tell you how you're going to spell that noun. Nothing about the meaning. So when I ask you to parse something, you don't need to tell me it's declension. That's not important. It may be helpful for you in recognizing it because of spelling patterns, but it's not a category of meaning. You need to tell me its case, gender, and number. Today we are going to learn the first declension feminine endings. So these are the endings that are going to attach to words that belong to the first declension. Every noun only belongs to one declension. It's a lie, but it's true enough. First to one declension, and only belongs to one gender. We already talked about that. So a first declension feminine word is a word like puela, meaning girl. If you look this up in the dictionary, it would say puela, puelai, which is your nominative singular, and your genitive singular ending. Puela, puelai. So first declension feminine endings go like this. A, nominative. I, genitive. I, dative. Accusative. ablative. And in the vocative, for all of these, is going to be identical to the nominative. So it's going to go puella, puellai, puellai, puellam, puella. Puella, puellai, puellai, puellam, puella. And the vocative is again puella. Okay? This macron is important. You must memorize the long A. You can probably already figure out why. It distinguishes it from the nominative. The ablative has a long A, the nominative and the vocative have a short A. Those are the first declension feminines. The first declension feminine plurals, those are the singulars, plurals go like this. Puellae, puellarum, puellis, puellis, oops, I messed up. What am I thinking? Puellis, puellas, puellis. There we go. So, puella, puellai, puellai, puellam, puella. Puellai, puellarum, puellis, puellas, puellis. Okay? You'll have noticed there's a bit of a problem here. Genitive singular and nominative plural are ambiguous. Genuinely ambiguous. You can't tell them apart. You have to use context to figure it out. Dative plural and ablative plural are also ambiguous. Puellis and puellis. You have to use context to tell them apart. That macron is going to be important. I'll explain to you why in a subsequent lecture, as is puellis, puellis. This macron is less important. This macron is less important. But the dative and ablative plural macrons are extremely important, as is the ablative singular macron. So practice those endings until you have them memorized, till you can write them out by memory. Alright, good luck.